How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Zack Hicks, your resident film nerd of HorseshoeHuddle.com, and of course, your favorite co-host over at the Locked On Colts podcast. We are back with yet another Tier List Tuesday here for the channel, and today we're going to be diving in all of the trades in the Chris Ballard era involving players. Now, when I say all of the trades, I don't mean every single trade, because there are a couple very minor, insignificant ones that just would kind of be weird to talk about, like Lindsey Pipkins for Antonio Morrison. As much as I love to talk about Lindsey Pipkins, I don't think either of those guys really did much of anything for their respective teams. So I'm not going to break down picks like that. But aside from that, we have some notable trades and acquisitions in the Chris Ballard era, and we're going to rank them on my typical scale I have on these Tier List Tuesdays. We got home run at the very top, we got good value, we got meh value, bad value, and then obviously the big old yikes category at the bottom. Also, for all of you guys sitting at home there, I did flip the colors on this tier list. The tier maker site that I use for these Tier List Tuesdays had red at the top, and I just kind of left it like that, but apparently that upset a bunch of you guys that red was at the top and green was at the bottom, so don't worry, I fixed it going forward. But we're going to go through and break down some of these trades, and even though I said there was no really insignificant ones, I guess this first one kind of is insignificant, where Dwayne Allen was traded in 2017 along with a 6th-round pick for a 4th-round pick. That 4th-round pick ended up becoming Colts legend Zack Banner, who didn't even make it out of camp for the Colts. So overall, I think getting a 4th-round pick for Dwayne Allen is actually great value and awesome, but it counts what you do with that pick, and the Colts getting Zack Banner, who didn't even really make the team, unfortunately didn't result in much there. So Dwayne Allen for a 4th-round pick, I think meh overall, because it's not like Allen went to the Patriots and became some superstar. Like, he was just, he's Dwayne Allen, the regressed Dwayne Allen, not the Andrew Luck version of Dwayne Allen. So I think meh makes the most sense there. But this next one here, Phillip Dorsett, former draft pick bust by the Colts, traded for Jacoby Brissett. I think we have to go home run with that. And so hear me out here. I know there's some mixed feelings about Jacoby Brissett in his time with the Colts, but to trade a player that you were likely going to cut for a quarterback who ended up starting 2 full seasons for you, one of those seasons was kind of like a last minute. I mean, I guess both of them were technically like last minute starts that he had to go out there. And I don't think he was horrendous in either of those seasons. Like, he was, a high-end backup level quarterback in those 2 seasons. Like, he wasn't awful. He was a great teammate, a very good backup quarterback in his time with the Colts. I think that was a home run trade. Like, it's not a home run in terms of like, we're getting so much surplus value that we're winning a Super Bowl because of it, but just to get a playable quarterback, a quarterback who's still starting games to this day and playing some good football, for a player like Phillip Dorsett, who was an absolute bust. I know the Patriots got a little bit out of him, but by and large, like, the Colts got some great value in that trade, getting a player like Brissett, and he was exactly the quarterback they needed. Because imagine if they don't make this trade, we get a whole season of Scott Tolzien in 2017, and 2019 would have been Brian Hoyer or whoever it was that they had that year. Like, I shudder to think of what that could have been. So we're gonna say home run, because Jacoby Brissett at least was an adequate quarterback for the Colts, and it could have been so much worse. And getting that for Phillip Dorsett, I think, is a pretty good win, pretty good return on investment for the Colts there. Next up, going over to 2018, the Colts traded away Henry Anderson for a 2018 7th-round pick. Now, this would not be notable in most cases, but that 2018 7th-round pick turned into Zaire Franklin, a player who's been named to an All-Pro team, who's been some Pro Bowls, and I know that he is public enemy number 1 right now, so we don't want to hear it, but getting a long-term linebacker, a guy who has started for so many years now, a team captain for multiple years, out of a player from the previous regime that you were just willing to dump in Henry Anderson, that's pretty darn good value for Chris Ballard and company. So again, it matters what you do with these draft picks when you get them. I don't want to look completely at hindsight, because you're trading like assets that you could use, especially when you're trading away draft picks. But for the Colts to basically replace Henry Anderson off of his rookie deal with Zaire Franklin on his rookie deal, and then the years after that with Franklin, is very, very good value for the Colts. So can't complain too much there. I think the Colts got some pretty good value there. This next one, though, is probably a shocker. I'm going to put it in bad value, but this is trading away Hassan Ridgeway for a 2019 7th-round pick. Now, Hassan Ridgeway was never phenomenal once he left the Colts. He went to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think he played a little bit for the Houston Texans. And he was fine. Like, he was a good rotational defensive tackle who did some good things at his next 2 stops. But the Colts got nothing out of that draft pick. They got Javon Patterson. Out of that, he didn't even play a snap for the Colts. And to lose a defensive tackle capable of playing on pretty stacked defensive lines like Houston's and like Philadelphia's, that it does kind of hurt that you lost a valuable pass rusher or a valuable guy who could, again, like at least can eat some snaps. And then we saw the years after that, the Colts resorting to players that just certain, like Curtis Brooks was a draft pick that was thrown in there. Eric Johnson was thrown in there. A couple other defensive tackles who just didn't really crack the rotation or add much value. And, if you're looking back again in hindsight here, Hassan Ridgeway would have been an upgrade over those guys. So, at the time, getting a 7th round pick for Hassan Ridgeway didn't feel like a bad trade, but because Ridgeway ended up being a solid rotational player at his next 2 stops, I know he's not in the NFL anymore, but, being a rotational guy, those next 2 stops, and the Colts just struggling at defensive tackle and getting nothing with that draft pick, I think it's fair to say bad value with that one there. DeForest Buckner, trading the 13th overall pick. It's the next one here. Trading the 2020 13th overall pick for DeForest Buckner. I'm between home run and good value because at the end of the day, trading that high of a pick for a player that's not on his rookie deal is pretty tough. But Buckner has been pretty darn good. I mean, he's cracked All-Pro a couple times with the Colts, been a Pro Bowler multiple times. I know there has been some injury issues, but the Colts just got their bona fide star defender. And outside of that trade for Buckner, how many star defenders have the Colts had in Indianapolis since Chris Ballard's been here? It took a hefty price to get that star player on defense, but Buckner has been that star since the Colts traded for him. Again, at the end of the day, like trading the 13th overall pick for a guy on a second contract is not generally great business. That's a pretty high pick to be trading for him, but to get such an impactful player, I do think that this was a home run. And it's kind of what the organization needed. It did kind of push them into winning some more games and being more competitive. It also doesn't help that draft pick turned into Javon Kinlaw. Like, if that pick was Tristan Wirfs, who's, perennial all-pro tackle when the Colts needed a tackle, then maybe you look a little different. And maybe that can be part of the conversation. The Colts could have taken a Tristan Wirfs with that pick. But overall, the Colts got the best defensive player of the Chris Ballard era with this trade, an impactful guy, a team captain, a team leader. It's hard to complain about the results with the DeForest Buckner trade, even if it wasn't like perfect, or like in a perfect world, you could maybe have traded a 2nd round pick plus some more to get him, or could have got like a 4th round pick back or something. Maybe the trade value was a little bit high there, but Buckner's been great for the Colts. It's hard to complain whatsoever about the end result of that trade. Next one here, we got another pretty good value here. The Colts trading away 2nd round pick bust Quincy Wilson for a 6th round pick. That 6th round pick ended up becoming Isaiah Rodgers Sr. Rodgers is becoming a star he became a star with the Eagles, and now with the Vikings, he is just an absolute playmaker. But even with the Colts, he gave the Colts so much more value than Wilson ever gave the Colts. I can't put this in home run though, because before the Colts could really reap the benefits of the Isaiah Rodgers acquisition in this trade, he got caught gambling, got suspended for a whole season. The Colts cut him, and then these other teams are reaping the rewards of his play. But, to get off of Quincy Wilson, which is one of Chris Ballard's worst overall draft picks in his time with the Colts, and getting a player like Isaiah Rodgers with that late pick, such a great find, one of the better finds of the Chris Ballard era, is very, very good value for this team. I just wish they could have reaped the rewards a little bit more so than what the Eagles and the Vikings are reaping right now. Now we get into some of the bigger trades, some of the trades that obviously inspired the making of this list. We are in 2021 still, and we're going to trade a 2021 3rd round pick and a 2022 1st round pick for Carson Wentz. That was a big old yikes. Just a really bad trade. And even, I know there's been some rewriting of history on the Carson Wentz season with the Colts. Some Colts fans looking back and yearning for the day of the 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions that Carson Wentz gave the Colts that season. But even if you think he was better than the perception was back then, at the end of the day, the Colts traded a 3rd round pick and a 1st round pick for 1 year of quarterback play, and then they had to take lesser return the next offseason. So by and large, that's a big old yikes of a trade there. They just did not get what they were expecting out of the trade. When you're trading as hefty of a price that the Colts did, You're expecting to make playoffs. You're expecting to have that quarterback for a long time. It resulted in a missed playoffs, one of the worst collapses in franchise history. And still, in my opinion, 2021 was more embarrassing of a collapse than 2025 because of who they had to beat those last 2 weeks to get in, and they just weren't able to do it. And then you end up shipping that quarterback out after the season. So yeah, I think that's easily the worst trade of the Chris Ballard era. Maybe there's another one coming up, but I think that trade was just so bad at the time. Like, even when they made the trade, I was like, why are we throwing a first in there for Wentz after the year he just had? And even when I became a little bit of a believer at the beginning of the season of Wentz, it was still like, I don't want that first in there. It's too much. But yeah, it ended up really biting the Colts in the ass, and they ended up having to ship Carson Wentz out after the season, which we're going to get to in here in just a second as well. Next up on the list, we have the Matt Pryor acquisition. I'm going to go meh. I think some people would put him in bad value. The Colts traded a 6th-round pick for Matt Pryor and a 7th-round pick. None of the draft picks ended up becoming anything important, just a bunch of roster cut guys. But getting Matt Pryor in here, you got 1 year of good reserve offensive line play and then 1 year of just dreadful play in 2022. But more of the issue was just trusting him to be a starter. It really wasn't the trade itself. The trade itself was to acquire a backup offensive lineman who could kind of play for you, like at best spot start every now and then. They just drank too much of the Kool-Aid after that 1 year of spot starting, and they threw him out there the next season to be their starter at left tackle, and it was just dreadful. So I think it was more of a bad decision to start him than it was like a bad trade. I think the trade was fine. Like, you got what you were looking for, which is just a fine reserve offensive lineman. So I think meh value for Matt Pryor. I know his tenure ended pretty terribly, but yeah, I think meh overall there. The Carson Wentz trade, though, the next offseason, it's not as much a home run as the first one was a yikes, but it definitely was a home run because the Colts basically built the next core of their team with the draft picks they got on trading away Carson Wentz. So they traded away the 47th overall pick and Carson Wentz. So the 47th overall pick, which became Fedarian Mathis, who has bounced around the league and was cut by Washington, for the 42nd overall pick, which the Colts traded back from that pick to get Alec Pierce and Bernhard Raimann, the 73rd overall pick, which was Jelani Woods, probably the only miss in there, and a 2023 third-round pick, which was Josh Downs. So they essentially traded away Carson Wentz after a year where they decided they didn't want him anymore. They bad return on investment from the year before. They traded away Carson Wentz for Alec Pierce on his rookie contract, Bernhard Raimann, and Josh Downs on their rookie contracts as well. Like, that's as good as recovery as you can do from the disaster that was the initial Carson Wentz draft. Now, part of that is just the drafting afterwards, and again, looking at this in hindsight, in retrospect, but getting the value they got at the time, which was moving up in the 2nd round pick and getting 2 third rounds for Carson Wentz after the depreciated value of that 2021 season, was pretty good work by Chris Ballard and company. And then to nail those draft picks, just put the exclamation point on top of it. So getting Raimann, Pierce, and Josh Downs after that one bad year of Carson Wentz almost makes up for it. Doesn't fully make up for it, but they did do a really good job of turning around that Carson Wentz asset and somehow still getting value on that trade despite the disaster that was the year before. Next up, though, we have Rock Ya-Sin traded straight up for Yannick Ngakoue. I think meh overall for neither player really served the role that the other team wanted. The Colts sold high on Rock Ya-Sin coming off his best career season in 2021. They sold high to get a veteran pass rusher that fit what Gus Bradley wanted. And Ngakoue was very much just a stat pad. I don't want to say stat pattern. He was like a cleanup stat guy. Couldn't really win his rushes. Wasn't really impactful from down to down, but got the 9.5 sacks that he was going for because he cleaned up some sacks. And Rock Ya-Sin regressed every year since, and he's been more of a journeyman in the league. So both players kind of flamed out with their next spot. They haven't really become anything, and you kind of just got to go meh. Overall, they both were just bleh players after that. Next up, though, Matt Ryan. The Colts trading a 3rd-round pick for Matt Ryan. I don't want to say big. Well, actually, they did have to eat a lot of dead cap when he retired, or when they cut him because he wouldn't retire. I'm going to have to put, you have to put big old yikes because the dead cap the Colts ate. I completely forgot about that. The Colts had to eat a lot of cap and a lot of dead cap after the one awful year. They didn't give up too much for him. Like, it was just a 3rd-round pick, and that 3rd-round pick ended up being D'Angelo Malone, who was not a good football player. Like, I don't even think he's still in the NFL at this point, or maybe he's a special teamer at this point. So it's like, that's more of a net neutral, but giving up a top 100 draft pick, paying all the money they did for Matt Ryan just to have that disastrous 2022 season, and then you have to cut him after that. Just an absolute disaster. That was, big ol' yikes definitely fits with the Matt Ryan trade. Maybe not as bad as the first Carson Wentz trade, but pretty close there. But we bounced back later in the season by trading away Nyheim Hines for Zack Moss in a 5th-round pick. That 5th-round pick ended up becoming Will Mallory, who's a fine depth tight end on the Colts team. But Zack Moss was the real beneficiary of this. Zack Moss went on to be the Colts RB2 the rest of that season, showed some really good value, and then when Jonathan Taylor wasn't fully healthy the next season, Moss went crazy in the first half of that season, ended up being a really good rotational back for the Colts over the 2 years that he was with the team. Nyheim Hines, did give the Bills a little bit of a good return. He had a couple of big kick return touchdowns, I believe, or at least one kick return touchdown with the Bills, but really bad off-field injury that led to kind of the down slope of his career, and it just didn't really work out for him there in Buffalo. So the Colts absolutely won that trade, got great value by getting Zack Moss in here, who was a really good player for them, and then also getting the draft pick on top of it, which was Will Mallory, almost A+. I can't go all the way because Moss is no longer with the Colts, but they got really good value out of that trade. I really like what they did there. Stephon Gilmore, they traded him away for a 5th-round pick after the 2022 season, so going into 2023. The 5th-round pick ended up being Evan Hull, so they didn't really get anything out of it. I think I'm going to go Matt. It was technically bad value because Gilmore ended up being a pretty good corner for the Cowboys, but that was more of a situation where Gilmore requested a trade because the Colts were so bad the year before. So I'm going to go meh overall. It was just kind of middle of the road, probably bad value technically, but he wasn't going to play for you at the end of that season because of how bad the Colts were in 2022. So you had to get something for him, and they got that 5th-round pick. They just didn't do anything with that draft pick. And then finally, the big one, the cherry on top, 2 first-round picks and Adonai Mitchell for Sauce Gardner. I think as of right now, there's still a chance that this could improve and at least move up to good value. But I think as of right now, you have to put bad value only because the price tag was so high for a cornerback. 2 first-round picks and Adonai Mitchell, who had a pretty decent end to the season with the Jets. But the 2 first-round picks, when the Colts didn't make the playoffs this year, we don't know if they're going to make the playoffs next year. That is a hefty price to pay. I said it at the time, and I still say it now. I still respect the Colts going for it, and I still respect them going to get going what they thought was going to be like a star corner. But it's not aging well right now, and you want it to age a little bit better going forward. But I still kind of believe, Sauce Gardner, I think, played some good football when he was out there for the Colts, but the hefty price tag, you need him to be like an all-pro corner for you. And he just hasn't played because of injuries, and we'll see what he looks like next season. So as of right now, we'll put bad value. This one has the most ability to move up and down. I think all the other ones are set in stone, but this one could end up getting up to good value. It could be home run if the Colts win a Super Bowl out of it, which I don't think they will, but it could get up to that high. Or if Gardner just struggles and deals with injuries, it could go all the way down to big old yikes. But as of right now, I think bad value fits that one the best so far. But let me know in the comment section what you think below. There were a couple of big time trades in here, and obviously if you disagree or agree with me, let me know below. That's all we have for today's Tier List Tuesday. We'll be back next week, probably going over some day 3 draft picks of the Chris Ballard era, or maybe looking at some free agents coming up, like tier listing them on priority for the Colts. But let me know in the comment section what you think. Have a great rest of your day, guys.